Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Last Best Hope for Conversation, your podcast all about Babylon 5. Joining me this week in the CNC is Karen.
Hi, everyone.
Good morning, peoples.
And we are talking Day of the Dead, one of my favorite episodes of Babylon 5, originally aired March 11th, 1998. Written by Neil Gaiman, the first person that has written an episode since the middle of season 2. Because of the complexity of the storyline, JMS made the decision that only he could keep everything, all the juggling balls in the air. He did say that from the moment he had Babylon 5 in mind, he wanted Neil Gaiman to write an episode, and he kept asking, and finally this worked out their schedule. Lou, quick thoughts of this one.
Yeah, this one was pretty good. I enjoyed all the separate storylines. It's got very much of a Christmas Carol vibe to it. So that was good stuff.
All right, Karen?
This is definitely the Douglas Adams side of Neil Gaiman, right?
Yeah.
Because he idolized. His first book was a biography of Douglas Adams, which he is not fond of anymore, but he does have that sense of humor. So this isn't like the Sandman vibe. This is the funny side of him, which I enjoy. I did also enjoy this episode.
The premise is that the comet is a comet who only appears during a certain time of year in Brakiri space. When this happens, it is their celebration Day of the Dead, and they are very excited. They go to Lockley and say, we need to purchase a part of the station for just a limited amount of time. It can't be leased. We need to own this so that technically it is Brakiri space during this time period. She agrees, and all kinds of fun crap happens. So, of the 3 or 4 storylines, is there one that stood out to you the most, Karen? And we'll end up spending time with each of them.
Now you're just talking about the Brakiri part of the episode, right? I thought there was going to be trouble when he said that he wanted to purchase that part about. I was like, oh no, what is that going to mean? It turned out to be nothing. He does give it back. But, and should it not be called the Night of the Dead?
And they talk about that because they're nocturnal people.
Right.
Their night is their day.
I get that they wanted to equate this to the Mexican Day of the Dead, which I love that whole tradition. Being from California, there was a lot of that culture imprinted on me. I do think that this strongly mirrors that whole vibe that on the Day of the Dead, it's when your ancestors visit you. And in this case, it's a literal, they visit you. I did find it interesting that from what we know, all the people that came back and visited their loved ones died violently.
Yeah.
So was it because there was some resolution they needed? I think my highlight was the Zoe Lockley storyline there. I enjoyed getting to see more of Lockley. We don't really know a lot of her backstory. We've seen her as a hard ass, and it was nice to see her as a human in this episode.
Yeah. Lou?
I agree with Karen. The Lockley one was the most satisfying. The one that intrigued me most was Near with Morton, which was a very interesting pairing.
Yeah. I think I've shared this before, that there was discussion of Jane Ebsen talking about if you get 2 characters that don't normally interact, and put them together will give you an interesting dynamics. One of the reasons I love this episode is Penn and Teller visit.
We're going to continue with the dreaming thing. We're going to talk about Penn and Teller.
Then we're going to go to the dreaming.
Okay.
If you guys had both picked your favorite one, I would have gone to that one. But since you guys had separate ones,
two different,
yes, I thought, okay. And I did say we get to all of them. Penn and Teller are there. The backstory is they knew they wanted a comedy duo. They had talked about them appearing earlier. And when they realized, oh, we could actually get a comedy / magic duo to attend, they did. They had to do a little rewriting because Teller does not speak on camera. He talks a lot about magic. If you just look in Google, even vaguely, you can have
Teller speaks.
Yeah, it's easy to do. He's been on Penn's Sunday School with Penn's podcast.
I think he's loosened that up a little bit. He's very sparing with his words, but he does talk now, right?
Yeah. Not on camera, not on stage. He continues
behind the scenes kind of thing.
Karen, thoughts on Penn and Teller being one of the world's most famous in this universe? They're the Laurel and Hardy. They're Abbott and Costello, Martin and Lewis. Thoughts on them?
I really enjoyed that kind of Abbott and Costello line he had with Sheridan when he said, he's only said one word to me. And then Sheridan says, what was the word? And he says, why?
Yeah.
And he says, because I want to know. No, the word was why.
Yeah.
I liked that they're actually pushing that image that they are kind of Abbott and Costello. I am a huge fan of Penn and Teller. I loved their show, Bullshit. That was the name of their show. I loved that show. It reminds me of other shows that I love, like Last Week Tonight. Adam Conover has a lot of projects that are similar where they debunk things, show the truth. And I really enjoy that. I think it's an offshoot of magic because magic fools you, but there's also an element of, hey, there's realness behind this and people can debunk it if they want to.
Yeah.
I did enjoy them in this. I know we've had build up to, in several episodes, they've dropped hints of Zooty and I thought the most awkward part of that is when they tell the joke to Len.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, cringy. But I enjoyed their antics. Let's put it that way. I really liked their little hat trick thing where they had the wrong hats and they had to switch them back. And then we see Corwin trying to do it later in the episode.
I thought that was a great bit of Corwin trying to repeat and wanting to do that.
I really loved that storyline and that it also played into the Lockley thing because we see her interact with Rebo and Zooty and how she doesn't find them terribly funny. We see a lot of Lockley in all the storylines here, which I like. But I love Penn and Teller a lot and seeing them in this was great. And the whole Neil Gaiman paired with Penn and Teller, I think, was a genius move.
Good. Lou?
Yeah, I enjoyed the Penn and Teller stuff too. I especially like the hat, the physical stuff, the thing he pulled out of his jacket that spoke for him. I didn't realize at the time, but I can see from the show notes that was Harlan Ellison voicing that. So that was interesting. But on the other hand, the reactions of the people in the crowd were far exceeding the actual comedy itself. So it's a bit of a disconnect and really awkward. It's like when you watch a movie about a fictional rock star and they're playing this music that you have no connection to and everybody's going crazy and you're sitting there and going, okay, but this song doesn't really deserve the reaction that it's getting because we don't have the emotional context for it. I thought it was interesting too that they talked about that they didn't want to be comedians anymore and that they wanted to do something important with their lives. And obviously there's a discussion about making people laugh is an important thing too. And the the line about politicians being funny was
the Senate, which is was very timely considering.
So that was good. I did like their portion of the episode. It's just the audience reactions who I thought were really forced and clunky.
It reminded me of when Terrence and Phillip were on South Park And the boys all go crazy about their fart jokes, and I'm like, they're not that funny.
So there was a comedian, I don't remember if it was Jerry Seinfeld or someone who talked about that they were they had reached the point where anything they say, people immediately start laughing because their mind is
Reputation. Yeah.
hardwired that
Yeah.
this comedian, whatever they do is brilliant and is funny. I think you could make the same argument that many people criticize huge Springsteen fans like myself. Whatever he puts out, I'm going to love because I'm predetermined to love everything Bruce does. So yeah, I think that's good. I did love, and JMS said it is Lockley is looking at them like they're the Three Stooges, and you either get them or you don't, and she doesn't.
The girl.
Yeah,
I feel like that's the line that's drawn with the Three Stooges, right? Guys
right.
find them
That's
more.
all. Yes,
Yeah.
and I do think it was more clever with the hat situation and everything. The line from Steve Martin out of context isn't funny, but because of the context, you laugh when you get that. Yeah, it was really nice to see. I did like them having this conscience of soul. It made for a fun kind of story. I don't know if it's still available, but at the time, Neil Gaiman sold the script for the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund. So if
Mm.
you bought it, there was the script book and he added notes, and some of the lines actually JMS added. I've cleaned up the script. So the premise is that people from your past or ancestors come to visit. I'm going to save our Jakar discussion because that made for an interesting kind of story. We'll start with Londo. Londo wants to talk to the first emperor. He's getting a little drunk. He's talking to the picture, and instead he gets in his mind his last great love. And he gets
Adira.
Adira. He gets to spend an evening with her, sharing intimacy, cuddling. In many ways, the implication is one last night of happiness before he starts this journey where we all know Jakar will end up killing him.
Right.
As someone who is not a fan of Londo's, you have not bought into Londo's redemption story. What were your thoughts about this night, Lou?
I liked it. It didn't strike me as hard as the Lockley storyline. Londo is a character who's made some terrible mistakes, and it's nice to get this reminder that before he went down the wrong path, he did have this relationship with somebody he truly loved. She brought out the best in him, and who knows how his life might have changed if they had managed to stay together. It's a somber, even
Yeah.
though it's a joyful experience for him, it's a somber viewing experience, at least it was for me.
Yeah, and he says, I killed the person who killed you.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
I think it's interesting, right? Because it reminds you Morden manipulated him.
Yep.
Morden killed her because Londo was going to go to a path that was not as beneficial for the shadows. How about you,
Hmm.
Karen?
Yeah. I think, as far as what Lou's saying, Adira dying was the thing that pushed him over the edge, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
That was the one thing in his life that could have changed. And I do find it very cool that he gets this resolution with her. I found it endearing that he says to her, I killed the person that killed you, letting her know that he is faithful, dedicated to her memory, that kind of thing. He didn't bring up the fact that, yeah, I killed the one who killed you, but I also killed someone else who I thought killed you.
Yeah.
Um, although he was due.
Yeah.
And also the fact that we get Morden in this episode was also interesting. He alludes to Morden, and then we get a little more of that story with Morden. The fact that his head's still on a pike. I love the Adira stuff. I feel like he needed that, maybe, to soften him a little bit.
And I love the idea when he's in bed with her. Why will she quit talking? He does no care. He is of everyone of the stories we see, I feel like he took the most advantage of the gift he was given.
Yeah. He bought
Um,
into it right away.
yeah, it seemed to give him a bit of a change because he wasn't a fan of the comedy duel, Rebo and Zooty. Toward the end, he was talking about, oh, you should play my inauguration. Let's talk to Morden. Morden is the one that visits Lanier, and this, in my mind, is the most wasted version, not from a script wise, but from Lanier not wanting to take advantage of this. Lanier decides he's going to ignore and meditate because he doesn't want to hear anything Morden has to say. Morden's, look, you're going to betray the Alashak. Delenn is never going to love you the way you love her. And Morden's got nothing to lose. And Lanier wastes that chance by just ignoring him to do any character growth. Karen, go ahead, keep talking, and then we'll get to you, Lou.
Yeah, he definitely could have said, how do I betray them?
Yeah.
I don't get it. What are you talking about? I would never do that. If there's anyone that would believe in this visit from someone who has died, I would assume it would be Lanier, right? Because he is very spiritual. And we know that the Minbari also believe in souls being something that is apart from the body, because we've seen that with the little balls of souls and all that.
And he specifically traveled during his leave to participate in this. And once it's read, he can't move forward.
He definitely did not have Morn in mind when he
Right.
thought he might see someone, right?
Yeah.
I would assume it would be Sinclair or someone like that. Sure, anyone, but you don't get to pick and choose who.
No.
And I think Morden was an interesting choice and something that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
I never expected we would see Morden again.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty cool that we got to see this. As much as I dislike Morden as a character, I think it was an interesting dynamic between the two of them.
And a great performance. This actor plays just enough of the smugness and everything. Lou, how about you?
I think it was interesting before Lanier got onto his room and had this visitation. When he went to visit Delenn, the first thing that struck me immediately is his clothes. He's all in black now, whereas he's always been in white. So I'm pretty sure that was the visual cue that he's not in a good place or that he's having dark thoughts. He's doing things for the wrong reasons. Maybe I'm reading too much into that, but that's just how I took it. I have to admit that even though you can't control who comes to your room, I don't even know if these two characters had a scene together. Did they? I don't really remember that. How would he have any sort of connection to this guy?
Yeah.
That would make him the visitation. Now, I guess the implication is that Lanier is in a dark place, therefore it only makes sense that he would bring up a dark character, but you would think that there would be other more influential people in his life that would have made an appearance. However, I actually can go along with the inference that he is in a dark place and that's why he got this character. Though I gotta admit, when he showed up, it shocked the hell out of me.
Yep.
I thought, why is he showing up? I didn't understand that.
He does say that he was sent.
Yeah.
Morden says that.
That was very interesting.
It's whoever he needed to see in that moment. Yeah. Might be everything.
Yeah. Neil Gaiman wrote the Doctor Who episode, The Doctor's Wife. Yeah. And there is a scene, for those of you who may never seen it, the TARDIS, which is the blue box, the ship that the Doctor travels in, is come to life into a woman. And he says, you were never reliable. You did not take me where I wanted to go. And the TARDIS answers, but I always took you where you needed to go.
Yep.
Which I think is one of the best lines because they'll often make fun of the Doctor can't go where he's a horrible pilot or they are a horrible pilot. And so I thought the same thing, that this festival gives you the person not necessarily you want to see, but the one you need to see. Yeah, really well
Yeah.
done. Hmm.
Yeah. A wizard is never late. He arrives precisely when he means to.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is setting up a very interesting situation with the Lanier's character. When he visited the Lynn, she was acting like everything was totally normal between them. Like
Yeah.
she was, and I think she was consciously trying to do that. The actor was portraying that in her actions with the character. But we know that's not where her head was, because in the previous episodes, she talked about how Lanier was really pushing himself too hard and so forth. And
Yeah.
also, the last time those two characters talked, she realized how deeply he felt for her. She brushed over it.
Yeah.
Maybe if she had expressed some concern for him, maybe he would have been visited by somebody different. It's a very small scene, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but that's what I'm playing with in my mind. And I think the idea Morton tells Lanier that he's going to betray the Shock is something so foreign to him that he just can't process it at all. So that's why he shuts Morton out, which I think is in keeping with Lanier's character, in that he has been pretty devout in his adherence to his principles. So this idea that he would destroy something is totally foreign to him. But it's an interesting paradox. And then I come back to his wardrobe is turned all black. I'm really worried about this character, and I'm not sure where it's going, but I don't think it's going to be a good place.
Yeah. And I do think this is a really well done foreshadowing. I am in the same place where you're wondering, I have a bad feeling of this, to quote Star Wars. I think that the idea where you just read the paper and Lanier ignores him, you feel this is just a wasted. And then we get, I'm going to save Lockley for last, if you don't mind.
About
Sure,
Delenn
please.
and Lanier.
Yes.
The vibe I get is that she is denying his feelings to herself,
Yeah.
but she also knows about it and is putting on a mask. So
Yeah.
I think there's part of her that goes both ways there.
Yeah.
And she wants to have that relationship. She's willing to either or both set it aside and also ignore it. And I did appreciate that scene between the two of them. I thought it was cool that he got Morden, and that's exactly who he needed to see in order for his storyline to come to fruition, right?
Yeah.
I'm worried about him.
Yeah, excuse me. Garibaldi gets Dodger, and that made me very happy. I loved that character on the episode Grappos.
Yep.
And I think that her joking about I'm a redhead, I could be the ultimate booty call, and Garibaldi instead remains true to Elise. Made you very happy, Karen, because you've talked about them with him and Lockley's chemistry together. She gets a shower, she gets to spend some time. She doesn't quote Emily Dickinson, but Neil Gaiman in the script book said, I figured that being a Marine, she wouldn't know that much poetry and she would get it wrong. But I just thought their interactions were together. I love that actress. They have great chemistry together. I am happy that we got to spend a little more time with them. So, Karen, as our rom-com specialist, thoughts?
Yeah, and we've been worried about, or at least I have, about Lise, and he does make a mention of her. I love that character. I was sad to see that she died, but it's also pretty cool that she died so that we can have her back in this episode.
Yeah.
And I think they had a real connection. Seeing them again is great. A million people could have come to Garibaldi, but I love that it's her, that it's someone that he's happy to see.
Lou? You're still on mute.
It's okay.
Yeah, it was an interesting choice for Garibaldi. I feel this was a wasted scene. I think there was other characters that he could have been brought back because he's lost a lot of people in his life besides her that were longer term relationships. So to me, it was a weird choice.
She's incredibly beautiful in the robe when he gives it to her. Like when
Yeah,
she says, "You could scrub my back."
She is sexy.
but
Mhm.
yeah, it was like I got nothing against the actor. I thought she did a good job. I just don't understand why she was the character that came back. What was the purpose of that storyline? Because if he's going to stay faithful to his wife, nothing's going to happen. I feel he was more there for that weird, I'm able to establish communications by putting a couple of cables together in my quarters, which it was just like, I thought this is total BS. It was my least favorite of the four. Or the most inconsequential, I think, of the four.
I guess because I love the actress and the character, I don't know honestly if I would have the strong will. And I am glad because because so often he is not in the storyline. I was glad to see him do that. All right, so then I think the one that when I originally watched this episode, the Zoe Lockley was my least favorite segment. And as I've watched this multiple times, yeah, I agree. I don't know if it's my favorite. I think Londo is my favorite section, but this is the one that I think give so much. And someone mentioned her password being Zoe's dead
Mm-hmm.
gives so much character story about her. Lou, let's start with you. What did you think of this one? And then we'll go straight to you, Karen, afterwards.
Yeah, I thought this was the most emotionally satisfying and strictly from a relationship aspect made the most sense out of the four, except, well, Londo's did too. But I thought this one made the most sense. And I love it when a piece of writing is used to fulfill several functions. And this scene, the scenes between these two did. It helped Lockley come to terms with the way that Zoe passed away and the revelation that she did it on purpose. Uh, I don't know if that was a good revelation. I think she could have made it clear that she was doing it because she had issues, not to make Lockley feel guilty. That was left a little unclear. But up until this point, Lockley's been a pretty locked down character. So you draw the inference from her background that she was always on the straight and narrow. But we find out that she was a rebel and they were basically living in poverty and doing drugs. I thought that was a good revelation, and it explains a lot about why her character is as tightly closed down as she is now. I think that of all the characters, she got the most emotional catharsis out of her visit from the past. Though I have to say, Zoe's dead as a password. That's pretty morbid.
It's not a great password.
And I guess maybe because no one knows she has someone in that past.
Sure.
I did love the journey that originally she, oh, of course it's an accident, and then later admitted that. Karen, your thoughts?
I think this is the most impactful storyline for me. I like getting to know Lockley more because she has definitely been an enigma up until this point. I like seeing that this is why she's so locked down. She found Zoe when she died and it was in a horrible state and it scarred her. And that's what convinced her to call her family and enlist in the military. I think it is definitely something she needed to reconcile. Even though Zoe giving that little kernel at the end saying that she did do it on purpose, I think that even if that's alarming and not satisfying, it actually closed a loop for Lockley. She didn't have to wonder anymore. And I really appreciated the resonance to what was going on and how her attitude was different afterwards. She seemed lighter, less on her shoulders when she comes out. She is more open to things. She's more relaxed after. So, yeah, I really appreciated that as a story beat.
Yeah, I really thought this was well done. And the idea that her father came and that seeing what happened to Zoe was a kind of wake up call. I have friends who have shared that seeing single moms struggle gave them the thoughts of why they embrace birth control, just not in a bad way, just as a maybe I should be ready before I have children. So yeah, I thought it was great and just a lot of interesting discussions back and forth. Um, by the way, Neil Gaiman said something very funny that he got a lot of feedback on why did Jakar not go to a hotel?
Right?
Why did he go sleep in the CNC? And
Mhm.
he's okay. You guys have no problem about the dead coming to life. He says he was making a statement. That's why he wanted this to be out there and done. And then to have the discussion of him going, I wonder who I would have saw and what I would have missed. That maybe the regret. Any thoughts on that?
That's interesting feedback from Neil, but this sleep in the CNC, that still doesn't make any
Yeah, it
sense
was
to me.
weird.
Like,
Okay.
why didn't you go sleep somewhere else on the ship
Hmm.
than in a cafeteria or a dining lounge or
Hmm.
something? I guess they just didn't have that set built, so that's why they
Yeah.
use that set.
We have
And
seen his quarters though, so we've
Yeah.
seen
yeah,
different things around Jakar.
yeah. And why wouldn't Jakar want to see something from the
Hmm.
past? Like he seemed to be the only one in the know, and that would have been interesting to see. For screen time, they decided not to go with that one.
Yeah.
But again, there's a character with a lot of baggage that they
Yeah.
could
Hmm.
have explored. But
Mm.
maybe the point is he's already gone through the crucible and come out the other side reforged. They've lost that spirituality that he had in last season 4. They carried it a bit with him writing the new Constitution. And I thought it was funny that Captain Lockley brought that back to him. And
Yeah.
that was this episode.
No, yeah,
He said, "Of
yeah.
course, I wrote it." And says, "Exactly." I thought
That was great.
that was a
Yeah.
nice touch. So yeah, I thought that was weird, but
Hmm.
in my mind, I just thought he's already come out the other side, so he doesn't really need this either.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on the episode before we get to our ratings?
I
Um,
think I'm okay.
I think that's everything.
All right.
I'm gonna give this one 8 Harlan Ellison voiced whatever that device was called.
Good.
Was that a device or was that the parasite?
No, that was a device.
It was
They originally the both were going to have speaking parts. And
right.
so when they did Penn and Teller, they had to come up with how and so they came up with the machine that would give that dialogue.
Good. It's good to know. It
Okay.
was just a thought that crossed my
Yeah.
mind.
Hmm. Okay.
Okay, I'm going. What did you give it, Lou?
8.
Yeah, same here. I'm gonna give it 8 portraits of the first emperor.
Nice. I'm tempted to give it a 10 because how much I love it,
Mm,
but I realize that's probably unfair. So I am going to give it 9 out of 10 misquoted poetry. It is an episode that I love watching as a standalone. You can't just give someone this episode and go, "Here, you like Neil Gaiman, watch this episode," because all the previous things go through it.
Forgot to mention the Kosh thing.
Ah, yes. The script has insert what Joe wants her to say.
Here.
Close
Okay.
print. And so he is the one who said that. Yeah, Karen, good catch. Any thoughts on what this hint is supposed to be?
I don't
This,
understand what he said. And again, it shows how they're the worst because he can't just come out and tell Sheridan.
yeah.
He has to put it in a puzzle. When the long night comes, return to the end of the beginning. And Sheridan's okay, whatever. So yeah, they're the worst.
Okay. You always did that. Lou, any thoughts on that?
I I thought the way Sheridan or Boxleitner played it, that Sheridan actually understood what was being conveyed to him.
Okay.
It'd be interesting to see how this affects him going forward.
More than
Okay.
we do, that's for sure.
Hmm.
Sorry for bringing that
No,
up
no,
right
no.
at
I'm
the
glad
end.
you did. I'd forgotten all about it. We did get some feedback, didn't we? Hey,
I'm gonna go with Nathan's first. Hello, Nathan. He
hey, Nathan.
says, "Hey guys," he says that. "I don't like Neil Gaiman, and we might have to ostracize you for that, Nathan." I'm just kidding, everyone. I think he has interesting ideas, but his actual books and scripts and comics are undercooked. It's like reading first drafts. JMS has the same quality to a lesser degree, but his approach I find mostly more satisfying because he asks questions or describes some fringe and biting situation, whereas Gaiman seems to try to say nothing about the most mundane thing. I guess I get that. Again, I think a lot of his influence is like Terry Pratchett and Douglas Adams, and they're both that kind of author. So I think they're all in that same vein where they dance around things, but you get
Well,
the gist of what they're
yeah,
saying.
I think the Gaiman's main thrust of his writing is he's raising the questions but leaving you to decide the answer.
I think so too.
He just asks interesting questions.
I respect you for that opinion, Nathan,
Yeah,
but we can't be friends.
yeah.
Sorry. I didn't care for either of those situations other than Londo's. We have a return of a character he loves. Morden just comes and sits there briefly, antagonizing Lanier. It was bland despite the ominous prophecy he gives. Lockley's story is potentially the most interesting, and with the best dramatic outcome, I see where they were going here rather than, quote, I enjoyed it. Garibaldi's story, nothing. That's literally what he said. But an egregious offense was the fact that it's an obvious supernatural event in a sci-fi world. Before this, the show was even keeled and had spiritual stuff that was up to interpretation, which I would be okay with. There was some kind of tachyon anomaly coming from Epsilon 3, and the show was more ambiguous about what happened. Plain supernatural stuff is a crutch writers use to do whatever without any basis, despite fantasy being considered a lower genre and mocked in more realistic media like Simpsons. But it's a useful crutch because writers think that in fantasy, anything can happen for no reason. I don't like that Gaiman did the same thing despite being an actual fantasy writer. With regards, Nathan.
Hmm.
I bet Nathan, you don't like magicians either then. My response would be the universe is a vast place, and even like Earth, there's a vast place, and there's still things that we can't explain. I like the idea that there's some magic or supernatural out there because it just means that there's more mysteries for us to solve or to explore. I don't like everything to be cut and dried, and I think that's the kind of writing that Gaiman does.
Yeah. And I think supernatural is one of those words that doesn't have meaning for us in the way that it originally was meant, like UFO. UFO does not mean little green aliens. UFO means anything that's unexplained. It could be a weather balloon before we know it's a weather balloon. It's a UFO, right? It's an unidentified flying object. So I think that has lost meaning. And I think the word supernatural as well. Supernatural just means something that we can't explain, period. It doesn't have to mean a werewolf or a vampire. So in this case, it could have an actual physical explanation, but because we don't understand it, it's fantasy or supernatural or whatever. And so I do think there's a little bit of it grounded in reality. It's one of those things where, yeah, it's fun and it gives another dimension to the show. But I totally respect your viewpoint. I think it's a valid viewpoint.
You There are things that are opinions and facts. And
Right.
I get mad with people who want to ignore facts and put their own opinions in there, especially when we talk politics. But this is pure, it didn't work for you. And
Right.
I get that. I think I would feel similar to what Nathan said if all of a sudden we had a lot more magic in this. All of a sudden, hey, where did this come from? But
Right.
for a one-off, they still debate at the end, what was this? They don't say it
Right.
was magic. Is it something going on? Garibaldi, of course, blames the telepaths because he wants to blame everything on the So, yeah, I thought that was very interesting to see. Very nice.
And one of the things I love about Nathan's feedback,
Yeah.
and I love all of our feedback, but I love that it sparks a debate and we
Yes.
talk about it. I love getting feedback from you,
Yes,
Nathan.
absolutely. All right, Texas, I
Yep.
believe. Send us.
So what does it say about those who are within the zoned off area and who do they see? Londo gets an evening with the love of his life. Why does she appear? Maybe it has something to do with Londo said before going to Centauri Prime. I'm sure you've already been told this episode is not in its correct order. Yeah, we have.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is we see him and Jakar go to Centauri Prime in an earlier episode, and now they're back suddenly on Babylon 5, right? I think it all goes downhill from here, so this might be one last night of pure joy before it all goes wrong. Garibaldi is visited by Dodger, who spends the entire time trying to get that action she couldn't get when she was here the first time. Garibaldi, while glad to see her, is in a committed relationship. Maybe that was the point. She could be a no-strings-attached fling that no one could possibly know about. Maybe Lockley, but I doubt she wants to have anything to do with Garibaldi's business like that. In the end, he doesn't, and while he does enjoy the time he spends with her, he doesn't indulge. And speaking of Lockley, she sees an old friend from her wild youth and gets an answer to a question she's wondered about for years. Did Lou or Karen have any inkling she would have a past like that? My answer is no. Okay, good. The most interesting of the visions is Lanier's, who gets Morden. Lanier himself already knew of this holiday and had come to experience it, hoping it would be Marcus. But the Day of the Dead does not send us who we want to see. It sends us who we need to see. And Morden has the wisdom Lanier wanted. The first is, Delenn does not love you the way you want her to, and she never will. The second is let Lanier one day betray the Rangers. Lanier, despite getting what he wants, refuses to listen. And Morden relishes every second of it. I actually rather like Morden here. He's almost jovial, something we've never seen from him before. He's been smug, satisfied, and menacing, but I don't think we've ever seen him having a good time. I guess death really was a release for him. He doesn't need to worry about his associates anymore, so he can just enjoy the brief time he has in the mortal realm again. So it all ends. Things go back to normal, and that's that, or was it? When the long night comes, return to the end of the beginning. That's a Kosh message if I ever heard one, but what do you think it means? And there's Jakar, who might he have seen had he stayed in his quarters? Unless JMS has said anything specifically, I'm guessing it might have been his father. Oh, yeah, because we have had some insight into that. Barring ones we've never heard of, I think he's put most of his other ghosts to rest one way or another. Anyway, hope you enjoyed Babylon 5's Halloween special. So until next time, when the screaming begins. Oh my, the screaming begins. That's our hint, I'm guessing. This is the Texas on the Shock signing off. Entel Zaveni in Valen's name. And Entel Zaveni, back to you, Texas. Did I use that correctly?
Yes, good.
And we love Texas's feedback too.
Yes,
if we don't get a Texas on the Shock feedback, I feel lost.
Yes, I agree. I appreciate that he's been on this journey with us, and we love all the feedback. But yes, both of them really very different and diverse, and that's a lot of fun. Because we're recording early, there is no feedback on our YouTube page, but please post, and we will catch up when we're recording after my trip to New England.
But we're just going to play catch up, right?
Yes, exactly. And maybe
the dad joke.
I love it. Yes.
Did you relish it? That's good.
If someone wants to give us feedback, Lou, and reach you, how can they?
They can go to YouTube and look for Lou's Reviews, where you'll find our flagship podcast, Babylon 5, as well as our JKL Media podcast. And I do some writer interviews as well as Stephen King podcast. And you can find me on Twitter at Lou W. Sytsma, Sytsma.
All right. Karen?
As we spoke about, you can email us at jklb5podcast@gmail.com. please do that because we love to get your feedback. And I am at Elevaria on the various social medias. And my blog is alliestuff.com. The landing page has a bunch of links for you.
I am at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter, and I continue to talk music on Set Listing Bruce and Perfectly Good Podcast, Doctor Who on Next Stop Everywhere. And I am so glad you're joining us on this journey. We are making our way to the end of Babylon 5. We are in discussions what we're going to do next. I know we have some one-offs planned and some discussions coming up. Once our schedule smooths out, mostly my fault, we will get to be doing some of our other one-offs on JKL Media.
Yep,
And
another Flanagan series, some classic movies,
yes,
quite a few things planned.
absolutely. And I want to thank both Lou and Karen for their flexibility as I had a hectic schedule over the past few weeks and the few weeks coming up. Thank you both. You are greatly appreciated. Any final thoughts before we're out of here, Lou?
No, just enjoy those leaves when you go to the East
Yes.
Coast.
That's
Yes,
right.
I'm looking forward to.
Those fall
Karen?
leaves.
Grab a couple orange ones for me.
Okay.
Right? Orange,
I'll send you,
yellow, and
yeah,
red.
I'll send you some pictures.
I really do miss the Blue Ridge Mountains. We lived
Yeah.
up there. It was a beautiful drive. So enjoy it. And we're happy to be flexible for you.
Yeah. If you want to see some of my New England travels, I will be posting stuff on my Twitter, aka X feed, and my Facebook page. So reach out and follow me, and you can see. All right, Lou, Karen, and listeners, be safe, be kind, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.